here today with another Pocketables. I'd love to say weekly, but I've missed a couple of them, and I'll explain why in a minute. Weekly news roundup. It has been a little while, and a lot of things have changed. But let's get into why haven't I been here for the past couple of weeks. Well, some things broke at work. We lost a UPS, and when everything goes sideways is when you finally take the time to fix all those little issues that weren't really a big enough problem yet, and suddenly they're a problem. So that's on me. I've been really busy running around fixing stuff. I'm even going to be working this weekend to put in another new UPS, so there is that. But that's not your fault. You don't care about that. What you care about is what I'm going to tell you next, and that is we have the Viotech FI32DB on the bench. I've been using it for a couple of weeks now. The unboxing went live actually this week. Got delayed a little bit in editing. But I've been using that for a couple of weeks. It's been featured on our Free Game Friday records, and that's been a beautiful screen to see. It's not as exciting as the gaming panels. I don't have any ridiculous numbers to brag about. I'm not running 180 hertz. I'm not running G-Sync. I don't have any aggressive design. It's just a very good monitor. And although it's not the best at anything, so far, for what I expected out of it, my only complaint's the stand. And I mean, if my only complaint's the stand, well, I complain about a lot of things, and that's a fairly replaceable one with a Visa mount. In fact, I may have one that I'll try here next week, but if my only issue is that I can't adjust the height with the built-in stand, well, it's not the end of the world. That's a good segue into the next thing I want to talk about, which is this week's Free Game Friday was among the sleep. And it didn't quite record at 30 frames a second. It played at 30 frames a second, but it didn't quite record where I wanted it to. And I talked about that some in the record. And I ran into similar issues with the previous week's game, and it was like, why does this look so choppy? Turns out Maxwell 1000M Quadros don't really like recording 2560 by 1440 in real time. So I may have to use an HDMI pass-through box in the upcoming weeks. Even though I'm playing at 2560 by 1440, I may have to pass through and capture at 1080 instead. This past week I used CPU encoding of all things and didn't quite hit 30 frames per second, but hit something reasonable enough that I didn't feel bad uploading the video for this week. Now, that does bring me to a question before I get to the game itself, is that has anyone seen a DisplayPort-based capture card, be it USB or PCI Express? And the reason I ask is because I'm using that monitor via DisplayPort now. My natural inclination when I hook a monitor up is that I want to use the best connection I can, and for most things that's DisplayPort. Sometimes it's HDMI, but 9 times out of 10 it's DisplayPort. So all of our capture cards that we've looked at so far have been HDMI, which means I can't capture a DisplayPort stream with them. And that's a bummer. Now I can rewire my docking station to HDMI instead. But if I don't have to, I don't want to. So if anyone has seen one of those, let me know in the comments, and I'm going to try and either buy it or get in touch with the manufacturer and see if we can feature that and then demo it. If not, I'll probably use one of the IO Gear cards that we've been working with for a little while. So, in fact, I'm using one for this news record right now. If anyone was curious, we're using 2 pieces of equipment we've previously covered for every record you see in the studio like this at the moment, and that may change or increase as time goes on. The Panasonic HC-V160 Handycam is not something I've reviewed, and not something I ever intend to review because they're just old, no longer in production, and they work, but I would never suggest someone buy one. But the Samson Go mic and the IO Gear Upstream Dual is what's actually capturing this segment right now. Moving on, there will be an unboxing, hopefully this week, if not week after, of the OWC Excelsior 4M2, and that is a PCIe card that I'm really excited to get, but I want to know what tests you guys want to see. So I'm going to run my normal SSD test suite on it, but it's not often we get a quad M2 device in. So if there's something extra or something more exciting that you guys would like to see, let me know and I'll make sure to include that in the coverage of that. And just so everyone's on the same page, we are going to look at one of the drives individually as well as in the PCIe holder. Next up, Windows 11's here. I actually recorded a segment for that and never got to edit it or upload it because I just ran out of time with everything catching fire and wanted to make some changes to the studio anyway. So Windows 11 is here. It was released October 5th, and it's been a fairly, I would like to say, uneventful release for Microsoft, but it hasn't been without its issues. The big headline issue has been that there is a scheduler bug that just chewed up performance on a lot of AMD CPUs. And I want to say we were seeing like 15 to 30% decrease in gaming performance. And that's not to say that's the only performance hit anyone has seen with Windows 11, but that's the big troubling one. And what I mean by that is that one was unexpected. Others, some of Intel's chips, some of AMD's older chips, that either don't support new CPU instructions or support earlier versions of those instructions and are less efficient than the newer chips, as Microsoft has rolled out some of the newer security features, are seeing a hit. And we're seeing that show up in game performance for certain features. And even on brand new chips, Microsoft is still debating, going back and forth, and I wish I could remember the name of the feature exactly. It's the next level version. I want to say it's app virtualization for their sandbox feature. And basically what's happening is apps aren't running directly in your environment. They're running in a simulated version of your desktop environment that has an overhead. And for a lot of applications, that's a non-issue, and it's a good thing for security. For games specifically, it is not ideal though. And there's been some back and forth on who's going to deploy that feature. Now, Microsoft's not turning that on out of the box on systems that are upgraded, but who is supposed to be deploying it by default, and it's something you can turn off, are big system integrators on their consumer and business line systems. So Dell, Lenovo, Hewlett-Packard. You know, if you go buy an Optiplex or a ThinkCenter, it should be on. If you go buy a gaming tower from Main Gear or Origin, it shouldn't be. And I think they haven't quite made that official yet, but that's the understanding that I have so far, is that smaller boutiques won't be required to enable it on their gaming systems, and even SIs will have the ability to disable it on systems that should just be for gaming. But anyway, so a performance hit there is expected, and you don't like it, but it's not unanticipated. A 30% hit to L3 access latency on a brand new Ryzen chip is entirely unexpected, and I believe came down to an issue with the scheduler, something that Microsoft did to handle the new Alder Lake chips, had a negative effect elsewhere. And since most Intel CPUs don't have L3 cache, it doesn't seem to be impacting them as far as anyone has said. Other than that, I haven't heard anything really terrible about Windows 11 so far. Plenty of people complaining about little things here or there, but no more than any other new Windows version. And that brings us to Paul actually has upgraded a slew of different systems, supported and unsupported, all the way back to one system that's dear to my heart, a T7500 Precision Tower. I had and used T7500 tower long before Paul got his, and it was our main video editing system up until this year. And it was actually the lack of AVX instructions that finally pushed me to get something a bit newer. But he's got an article there, I'll link that in the description below, where he goes through, he's upgraded that, he's upgraded a small, I want to say netbook, but it's not a netbook, a yoga laptop from Lenovo, but it's one of the Intel Celeron 2000 series ones. It was like a 2600 something. Just quad core Atom, basically. And that's been a positive experience with Windows 11 for Paul so far. Moving on, probably just one big piece of tech news that's happened recently before recording this. I mean, there's plenty of things that have happened, but one that really caught my attention was there's been lots of leaks about Intel's upcoming Alder Lake chips. And this is the one I was kind of worried to see how this would play out, and this is the pricing. So Microcenter, actually on the day I recorded this, posted prices on the 12900K and 12700K at $669.99 and $469.99 respectively. And I find these prices actually fascinating. And the reason for that is two parts. Functionally, a 12900K and a 12700K should be the same silicon. And it will be binned and potentially harvested between the two. And what I mean by that is those are two different processes. The 12900K and the 12700K both have the same number, 8 high performance cores. Where they differ is the 12900K has 2 additional efficient cores and has a 3 gigahertz higher turbo, 5.3 gigahertz instead of 5.0. However, the 12700K has the higher base clock, which I just think is weird. And this is all speculative. This is leaked information. These aren't retail numbers. Some of this is still subject to change. But if Microcenter had it posted in their listing earlier today, I don't think these things are going to change too dramatically anytime soon. But anyway, so these come out as the same Alder Lake silicon, and basically what makes a 12700K instead of a 12900K is either one of the 2 efficient cores is a dud, or one or two of the 8 efficient cores are a dud, or maybe it just uses more power than it should, hitting that 5.3 gigahertz target. So they say, okay, well, we'll clip off 2 of the efficient cores with a laser, and now it's a 12700K, and it is perfectly happy there. So it's potentially harvested and definitely binned. But that is a huge price delta between the two for what should be a mature process. I mean, we're talking $100 for 2 Skylake level CPU cores. Something that Intel previously would have basically sold you a 2-core Skylake chip for less than $100 in some cases. So what that makes me wonder is just how far are they pushing the current process for those 12900Ks? And we saw this before. And the chip that I'm talking about specifically is the 10900 versus the 10850. The reason for that is the 10850 was basically a 0.1 gigahertz slower 10900K, but at a reduced price and with a massively better availability. And the net result was that basically you could count on being able to buy a 10850K. And there really wasn't much reason to buy a 10900K unless you absolutely needed the best binning. So I wonder if we're seeing a similar situation here where, and I think I said 100 earlier, a $200 price delta in the Skylake era would have bought you an i5. Hell, a $200 price delta may come fairly close to buying you an i5 today. Which, hopefully those are reasonably priced. I don't have any actual information on those yet. But that is a lot of money for 2 efficient cores and 0.3 gigahertz on a K-series chip. Now, next gen, 13 and 900, 13, 700 could be a completely different price divide, could have more high performance cores. I don't know. Actually, that does segue into one additional piece. On the note of Intel, a couple more things that we do want to touch on this week. And that is Intel has both committed to something and leaked a little bit of information I don't think they intended to. So the commitment is that the Alchemist Arc brand graphics cards will be on store shelves in Q1 of 2022. Which, for a company that has not launched a actual dedicated graphics card in like 20 years, is a hell of a statement to make. Although I really would have liked a date on that, because Q1 is like a 4-month span. 3-month span. And it could show up, at the beginning, at the end, at the last day of Q1. That's a big difference there. But having that commitment is a good thing. The thing that they leaked is they've got a giveaway going for one of the cards, or for a couple models of the cards, I suppose it was. And in the details on the giveaway, they announced the value of the prizes, which I think they have to do from a legal standpoint. And it looks like the premium version seems to be valued at about $825. And the performance version, they're valuing at $650. Now, there are other things included in that prize that can impact that price, such as, I want to say, like 6 months of Xbox One's Game Pass. Although I can't imagine that's a huge contributor to that value, since Microsoft routinely gives those away for like $1. But that does give us kind of a ballpark pricing. And that premium model at $825 is really targeting somewhere in the 3080 performance bracket, which is not going to put Intel on top of the graphics card game. Even if they hit their target, they're not going to be on top because the 3080's been superseded by the 3080 Ti and the 3090. But if they can keep the supply up and it performs the way they are telling us it will, which nothing ever does, even if it misses that mark by a little, at $825, if it gives us 3070 level performance, well, I can't buy a 3070 for $825. So those should sell well. All of that is, of course, almost entirely pure speculation, because Intel could have one card on a shelf at the end of Q1 and say that they met their mark, and then just run the same supply issues that AMD and Nvidia have had for months. Years at this point, actually. So that it'll be exciting having a third player and what has traditionally been a 2-player race for a long time. In fact, God, when was the last time I saw a graphics card that wasn't AMD or Nvidia? It must have been a Matrox card in the early 2000s, and it was a workstation that just was using it for like 9 monitors or something ridiculous. And even those, the last Matrox cards I saw actually had AMD GPUs on the card, being branded and sold by Matrox to handle a 9 output card. One, I guess, word of concern or warning this week is that it looks like shortages are not just being limited to things like semiconductors. There's an article on Ars Technica today that there is a cardboard shortage, which means all of this cardboard that I have in my office and everything is worth its weight in, well, I'd say gold, but hopefully something a little easier to move around. And what's going on is this is the mills that process the cardboard. A lot of them closed when the pandemic started. And although many of them have since reopened, well, there was backlogged customer demand, and some of them shifted to other products in the meantime, making things like masks or other various disposable items of PPE instead of cardboard. And so between shifting production priorities and backlogged orders, well, I don't really know what's going to happen when we're all trying to order stuff from Amazon for Christmas this year. And it'll make things exciting, because the alternatives to cardboard for packaging, things like paper or plastic, are just as scarce. Petroleum products have had shortages since Texas power grid was offline and a bunch of refineries couldn't keep up or couldn't catch up. Paper products are processed by the same kind of mills that handle cardboard, so it's going to be an exciting holiday season, to say the least. With that all said, I hope you guys enjoyed the new format. I'm going to be updating this a little bit. I've got a new microphone coming to replace the Go mic here, and that'll be a review item on Pocketables. I ordered that on Amazon, something I really like stylistically, and I hope it sounds good. And I usually key it in afterwards. Maybe I'll actually get a live, real-time display and queue up some of the cards for these items, and maybe we'll do one of these live if that's what would be more exciting for everyone. We're certainly equipped for it finally. With that all said, I want to thank anyone who helps support Pocketables, either on Patreon or by using our Amazon affiliate links. Although if they're out of boxes, who knows how long shipping will take. It's support like that that helps make videos like this possible. I want to thank Electrix, as always, for providing our opening and closing themes. And finally, thank you for watching.